By now, we've all seen clips and videos of Hamilton limping out of his W13 after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. This image and actions from Hamilton have sparked the discussion between the teams, its drivers, and their fans on whether or not the FIA should step in to make things safer, but not compromise the competitive aspect of the sport. But should they? Or should this be tackled by teams on an individual basis? Let's talk about it. But before that, consider subscribing to the channel if you wouldn't want to be driving the W13 like us. Now let's get to it. Many F1 fans and personalities believe the reason that Mercedes is pushing the FIA so hard to make a rule change regarding the porpoising is that they are undoubtedly the poster of the said phenomenon. While it is undeniable, Mercedes themselves have come out to admit that they may have pushed the car's limits too far in Baku in hopes of unlocking the car's performance. In Mercedes' race debrief of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, James Vowles, the team's motorsport strategy director, would say, "On this occasion, though we pushed the package and our drivers too far, we are putting them into significant discomfort and we simply can't do that again." Vowles added, "Our drivers are not the only ones suffering. You will see in the media a number of comments from a number of drivers who are equally in discomfort and pain, and we have a responsibility now to make sure that this doesn't carry on." James would also clarify the difference between porpoising and bouncing, and that the latter was the one the team experienced on the streets of Baku. In his words, "I'm confident we've made a step forward in terms of porpoising, but we very clearly have bouncing, and to the outside, it almost looks identical. But there is a subtle difference between the two," Vowles explained. "What is happening now is that the car is lower as a result of fixing the first issue, but now hitting the deck quite hard, and that's creating the bouncing you see at the moment. Again, you try and extract performance by running the car low, but the problem is very different, and the bumpier the track, the more the input is clearly having an effect, which is what we saw in Baku." Now that we have a clear picture of the difference of the two, we can imagine the headache that teams, their engineers, and their drivers have to go through from race weekend to race weekend. And it seems that it isn't only Mercedes that this phenomena will not be sustainable, with Ferrari's Carlos Sainz agreeing that the bouncing makes driving very unpleasant to say the least. In his words, "And it was very, very painful. I saw other drivers struggling on the straight, and we got to the point where we looked at each other to say, we have to do something because we can't last another 10 years like this. We therefore kindly asked the FIA to examine the matter and to listen to us drivers because we are starting to struggle to manage the situation. We do not need a medical commission," he added, "but only of something smarter about suspension or how cars are put on the track. We would like the FIA to act quickly as possible, because otherwise the situation will start to be difficult to manage due to the accumulation of pain. I don't know if we can talk about danger, but we have to ask ourselves if it is necessary for F1 to have 20 drivers with back problems at the end of each race. With today's technology, why does this painful situation have to continue in our careers when there is a very simple solution? Is it really worth it? I do not believe it. I think it is not necessary, and that all of us, including the teams, should think about the driver's health. I believe that everyone has their own opinion, but also their own interests." McLaren's Daniel Ricciardo would also chime in, saying that the possible long-term effects that it may cause to the driver's brain and spine may put their future lives at risk, saying, "I dread to feel what the others felt, because honestly today was bad. I really struggled. It was, simply putting it, painful. It's unnatural. It's literally like someone's bouncing you, like a pro basketball player when they get the ball really, really low, like being professionally dribbled by NBA player Steph Curry or something. Obviously, like the compression, you are sore and you feel like you are kind of getting squeezed, so it's not good. I'm stiff now and painful, but also like getting out of the car, and I'm not exaggerating, I just felt shook, a bit rattled. So it's not a normal thing. And I think also the frequency, this kind of shaking of the brain and the spine, I don't think it's good long term. It's one of those ones where we don't want to be naive or ignorant and just tough it out, when there could be some kind of long-term damage. And if we go further down the grid, Alfa Romeo's Valtteri Bottas also believes that it is time for the FIA to step in to ensure the safety of their drivers, saying, I've seen how sore some of the drivers are after the race. Some of the certain speeds and corners, the cars are less under control because of it. It is definitely a topic and it's getting quite serious. I'm not sure how sustainable that is in the future. And we start to actually see injuries of drivers just by driving the cars. That's not how it should be. We, as drivers, spoke with FIA at the last race and made the point pretty clear that we would like to seek for any options in the future how we can improve it. I don't think I've ever felt in the worst way than some teams or drivers are experiencing it. Now that we've established that the drivers from different teams are also in favour of the FIA stepping in to help protect drivers and the longevity of their careers, the next question would be, will there be a disadvantage if and when the FIA decides to step in? One disadvantage would be that Red Bull would lose almost all their performance advantage over their competitors because they are the only team on the grid that has their porpoising issues kept to a minimum, which has led to them having the best straight line speed out of all the teams. While this may seem like they are being cheated out of their number one standing, we all must remember that the purpose of these new era cars was to have closer, more intense racing action, which for the most part has not been the case for Red Bull and the times they've won, barring a DNF from Ferrari, of the races they've finished and come in second after Red Bull. The gaps were much wider than what fans and the FIA would hope for, with Red Bull for the most part cruising to the finish line. Example A would be Verstappen's win in Miami. The closest the two got was on Verstappen's move on Leclerc to gain the lead, which held on to up until the safety car restart. The closest we got to what the FIA intended to happen for these new eras of cars was at Jeddah, where Leclerc and Verstappen fought for it until the finish line. Since the race in Baku, the FIA has acknowledged the driver's request and have agreed to do further research on what would be the best course of action for the problem. But Sky Sports F1 reporter Martin Brundle believes that the likelihood of the FIA taking action is very low. Generally, we had porpoising back in the 80s. When you have these ground effect cars, it's always been an issue, said Brundle. It is still in sports car racing. I was at Le Mans and in the prototypes. There, they have porpoising and ground effect issues in terms of bouncing. It needs managing. To ask the other teams to change the regulations to help Mercedes is a bit like asking a turkey to vote for Christmas. I'm not underplaying what George Russell and Lewis Hamilton are going through because it does look particularly painful. And the Ferrari drivers, just at the crucial braking points, that looks plain tricky to me. I don't know how they go into the corners, frankly. Whether or not the FIA steps in is beyond anybody's control. But what is certain is that a good majority of the drivers will end up limping for the rest of their lives, or as AlphaTauri's Pierre Gasly would say, will end up walking with a cane at 30. But what do you think? Is it time for the FIA to fix this issue themselves to protect their drivers? Or are you with Red Bull and think that the engineering and research aspect is part of the game? Let us know in the comments section below. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.